This is Chile, one of Latin America's richest countries. And while being the skinniest nation on the planet, Chile has also been doing capitalism and making money. But the path for this South American nation to its current status of high-income economy has not been without criticism. So, enough of this intro and let's dive into Chile's economy, starting with its history. Welcome to the Economy of Chile. An independent Chile has now been around for over 200 years. And at the time of its independence, Chile's economy was predominantly based off the sales of agricultural produce and mining activities. However, with independence came a decrease in trade as political instability was high in the region, particularly with neighboring Peru. Throughout the following decades, Chile's main drive of economic growth was through the exploitation of its natural resources, of which it had many. Chile was a top producer of wheat, silver, and copper, and saw investors pour money into its infrastructure to help turn those natural resources into some cash. In fact, many people from across the US and Europe emigrated to Chile to participate in its mining boom, which many point towards as a motive for the War of the Pacific, when Chile took control of mineral-rich territory belonging to Bolivia and Peru. But anyway, throughout the 20th century, Chile bounced between booms and busts. For example, Chile was hit particularly bad by the Great Depression in the early 1930s, seeing the authoritarian regime at the time collapse. But for the following 2 decades, it made a lot of progress in industrializing its economy, so much so that industry nearly contributed 25% of the country's GDP in 1955, similar to its figure today. That said, perhaps the most well-known part of Chile's economic history are the neoliberal reforms that took place in the 70s and 80s. You see, at the time, Chile got caught up in the USA's and Soviet Union's who's got a bigger brain contest, which almost always ends up with the country stuck in the middle getting an unhealthy dose of US or Soviet influence. And Chile was that country in the middle. To massively simplify, US influence in the establishment of Chile's most recent and hopefully last dictator saw conversations around economic policy shift from nationalization and centrally planned economic programs to neoliberal and fiscally conservative policies. Since then, Chile's economy has consistently grown faster than its South American peers, and it's currently alongside Uruguay as one of the richest nations in Latin America. But despite its recent impressive economic growth, inequality remains very high within Chile, and it is often highlighted as a failure of the nation's governments since its neoliberal reforms. So, what is Chile's economy like today? How bad is its inequality? And where might things be heading? So, Chile's economy today is about $300 billion in size, similar to that of Colombia's or South Africa's. It also has similar living standards to Bulgaria and Uruguay. But these figures don't really show you how important Chile is to the global economy, because despite having a similar population and economic output as Romania, Chile's significant mining sector sets the nation apart. In fact, a third of global copper output is produced in Chile, making it the world capital of copper. And there are many other resources that Chile plays a key role in mining, and I'll just put them up on the screen to save my pronunciation errors. Most of this mining takes place in 2 regions, the Norte Grande region and the Atacama Desert. The significance of these resources give Chile an elevated level of importance in the global economy and geopolitical playground. For example, the thirst for raw materials in China has helped boost Chile's exports over the last couple of decades, so much so that China is by far the largest trading nation of the South American country, consuming more than a third of all of Chile's exports in 2019, linking both nations with a relatively high degree of interdependence. But Chile itself must be careful too, because its economy, to no one's surprise, is heavily reliant on its massive mining industry. Raw materials alone account for half of its exports. And even though a slowdown in Chinese demand has and continues to take place, global demand for lithium has drastically increased and may keep Chile locked into its dependence on its natural resources for economic success. This, in and of itself, is not a terrible thing, but it's also not the sign of a fully matured and highly developed economy. And the proceeds of this resource wealth have been questioned by many Chileans. And that leads us to our next segment. Chile does not often make global news headlines, apart from when miners get stuck in a mine. Anyone remember that? Anyway, recently, when Chile has made global news, it's been about protests. You see, there's been a wave of protests since 2019 in Chile, and they're still ongoing. These protests have come about predominantly because of discontent with inequality and the cost of living in the country. In fact, one of the largest protests in the country saw around 1.2 million Chileans take to the streets of Santiago, the capital. The inequality that Chileans were protesting appear clearly in global data too. You see, despite the country having a high Human Development Index, its Inequality-Adjusted Human Development Index sees its score drop 16.7%. For context, even the USA, which isn't exactly a beacon of equality itself, sees a smaller 12.7% drop in its figure. Part of the reasoning behind this gap in inequality are taxes, because tax revenue in Chile is very, very low. And although that might sound like a paradise to some, that ignores the fact that taxes are essential to a prosperous society. Chile's tax on personal income, for example, is just 25% of the OECD average in relative terms. And although tax on corporate profits are relatively high according to the OECD, which may be skewed by larger mining companies, this shouldn't be a substitute to proper rates of taxation in other parts of the economy. But anyway, protests will continue until the real-world personal situations on the ground change in Chile, because a nation that has been applauded for its relative political stability and economic growth in the last couple of decades needs to be felt by all those in society. And given that the nation has recently voted in Gabriel Boric, a young leftist president, it could perhaps be that those 1.2 million protesters get something for their troubles. Just don't tell the White House. Hi everyone, if you liked today's video, don't forget to give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you are new here. I'm sure a lot of you have some opinions about Chile's development in the last couple of decades, so please just throw them in the comment section. And don't forget to check out the channel support box in the description below. Otherwise, take care. Bye.